For this class, we are going to be using a service called Netlify. Now, Netlify is a free service as long as you're using its free tier. And what it provides for us is a web server in the cloud to which we can auto-deploy our website code for our portfolio website. Now, when I say auto-deploy, what I mean is that instead of us needing to go to a more complex service like Amazon AWS or Microsoft Azure or Heroku or any of those others and set up web servers, set up the website and manually configure and then manually deploy our website to those servers, instead, what we get to do is we get to have an auto-deployable website that we don't have to worry about the infrastructure part of it or the server part of it, and we can focus more on our portfolio that we're building in this class. So what the Netlify service does is it integrates with a Git or a source code repository management platform such as GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. And what this allows us to do is, as we are working locally on our machine and we are building our software, every time we commit that software to our Git repository and we push it to GitHub, Netlify will be constantly querying GitHub to find out if we have had any changes to our source code. If it detects that we have had new changes that have been added to GitHub, what Netlify's service will do is it will pull the latest commit to GitHub. It'll pull it to our server that Netlify has set up for us, and it will automatically deploy our software solution, so our website, to the server, and then we will instantly have that updated website running on the internet for the world to see. Netlify also provides us with a custom domain that we can actually give to our family and our friends if we want them to check out the cool stuff we're building. It also allows us to provide that URL on a resume or a job application. It also is really good if we're submitting it part of a college application, if we're applying for a computer science or an IT program at a college or university. Having something like that in our application and providing that could be beneficial to our application in getting us accepted to the program. So all around, this is going to be a really good option for all of you to begin building a portfolio website that shows everything you can do as a web developer. And we'll be building this website throughout the course. So let's go ahead and get started. Each of you should have already gone through the entire Git module, which teaches you all about Git, teaches you all about source control and source management and why we use source management, as well as walks you through setting up a GitHub account and then creating your first repository. Now, I'm assuming that we've already done that, so if you haven't done it, please pause the video, make sure you go to the Git module and walk through that entire Git module so that you understand what Git is all about, why we use it, and how to use it. And we'll begin from the point of assumption that you already have a repository created. I am currently logged into my GitHub account, and you will notice over here on the left-hand side, I already have a web dev portfolio repository ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my web dev portfolio repository, and you'll see I've got my, it's a basic brand new repository with nothing in it except for the Git supplied files, which are your Git ignore, which helps Git understand which file types you want it to ignore in the project so it doesn't track changes against them. The license, which talks about how you are offering this code to the world, whether it's free, completely free, whether it's an attribution license or an MIT. And then a README, which talks about the contents of the website or gives kind of an instruction document to whoever looks at your code. So you should have at least those three documents. It could be completely empty, or you may actually have a repository that already has code in it. Either way, you need to have a repository in Git in order to set up your Netlify account. Now with Netlify, when you come to Netlify, you have the option of signing in with just an email account, but that's less productive. We want to actually integrate with one of these three services. So go ahead and click on GitHub, and since you are already logged into your GitHub account, Netlify is going to check your browser and find that you are already logged into GitHub, and it is automatically going to tie Netlify to your GitHub account. Now, I've already tied mine to my GitHub, so you might actually run into a couple of screens where it asks you to provide Netlify the rights or permissions to access your GitHub account. So make sure you tell it yes and give it the full permissions it's requesting. That way it can monitor your Git repository. Now when you first log in and you don't have any sites, you should be on a page like this one where it lists all of your sites, but we don't have any sites set up, so there are no sites. So come over here to the right-hand side and click on New Site from Git. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the provider that we want to use. We are currently using GitHub. GitLab's another great option, and so is Bitbucket. Most of my personal and professional projects I'm running through GitLab, but for educational purposes and because GitHub is the most popular and most well-known, we're going to stick with GitHub. Let's go ahead and click on GitHub. Here's where I'm talking about the authorization. Since I've already authorized, we had that little pop-up that showed authorization. Most likely you're going to get a pop-up that actually asks you to grant permission, but since I've already done that, that pop-up kind of identified that I had already done it, and then it closed really quickly. But make sure you grant permission. Now, once you've granted permission for Netlify to dig into your GitHub and look at all your repositories, what you are going to find is a list of all of your repositories that you could select in order to use for an auto-deployed website. I'm going to go ahead and select my web dev portfolio because that is the repository that I'm going to be working in for the next series of screencasts. So I'm going to click web dev. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as that owner. I am going to go ahead and use the master branch inside of my repository. That is where all of my production code is going to be. If I have any temporary features or if I'm working on something that I don't want deployed to the internet, I'm going to create a separate branch to work on that. And then when it's all ready to go, I would then merge that branch into master, and as soon as I pushed that up to GitHub, Netlify is going to be notified that there was an update, and then Netlify is going to pull all of that code, auto-deploy it for me, and my website's going to be immediately updated. And I don't have to do any of that deployment. Now we're not going to worry about build commands because we're going to be doing basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we're not going to worry about build commands that might be associated with other development platforms like C#, Java, Ruby, Python, PHP, anything like that. We're not going to worry about a publish directory either because we're building just a straight HTML website. And we're not going to worry about advanced. So go ahead and leave everything else as default and then click on deploy website. Cool thing here is that Netlify is right now in the process of setting up our virtual server or our little container that's up in the cloud. And once it has that container set up, it's going to build us a domain name. It's actually a subdomain of netlify.com, but it is unique, and we can use this URL right here to give to our families and our friends, use on our portfolios, or use it on our applications for jobs or for college. And we'll get into a way where we can actually make this a little bit more readable and a cleaner domain that we can give to people that's more custom, and that comes down right here through set up a custom domain. But that requires us to purchase a domain and have a credit card to do that. So I will leave it up to you. If you want to have a custom domain that's something like timsawesomewebportfolio.com instead of this crazy one like practicalbaba.netlify.com, instead of having this crazy one that's hard to remember that's custom built by a computer, you can go buy your own domain and then actually point that domain to your Netlify website, and then you'll have a really cool domain associated with your portfolio. But I'll leave that up to you as an extra exercise if you would like to spend the money on a domain and point it. As of right now, our site has been deployed. If you look at step number 1, your site has been deployed. You can add a custom domain, and our website is automatically secured over HTTPS using an encryption certificate that Netlify already has for its domain. So we are all set up. It's been published. Here you can actually see a preview of everything that has been published and when it was deployed to the web. And right here you'll see no deploy message, they published head, but if we go back and we look at our portfolio, because we have a bare bones repository and it doesn't have an index.html, the reality is that although this got deployed, the web server isn't going to have anything for us to view. So if we copy this URL right here and we open that up in another browser window and we go to it, we will get a page not found. Now this, although it's an error, it's a really good sign, because what it tells us is that this custom domain that was given to us by netlify.com has been entered into a DNS, and now anybody can get to it if they have this link. The reason why we're getting a page not found is because we don't have an index.html yet, and we'll be getting into creating and deploying our first HTML page in our next video. So, to recap, we need a GitHub account, we need a repository that we're going to be working with, we log in with GitHub into Netlify, so we use an SSO to get into Netlify, and then we give Netlify access to a specific repository that we know we have code in it or will have code in it that we want deployed to the website. Netlify creates a custom domain for us. It pulls all of our code from GitHub, from that repository that we specified. It deploys it to our little web server or our little container that's sitting in the cloud. And then it wraps it all in HTTPS so we're secure and allows us to add a custom domain. That is setting up Netlify so that we have a live portfolio website that we can show off to everybody.